Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey here with Chris Ballas and Anthony Broom on Thursday, August 7th. We're Chris Perry days until Michigan football, Michael Barrett days until Michigan football, Cole Sullivan days, 23 days until the Wolverines kick off the season. If you're excited about the 2025 season, make sure to give this video a like, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And special offer for you, head to thewolverine.com. You can use the promo code UM1, that's UM in the numeral 1, for 2 months of premium access for just $1. You don't just get on our site over at the Wolverine. You get to look at premium access at any fan site around the country. National content from Andy Staples, Ari Wasserman, Ross Dellinger just joined on board, Brett McMurphy as well, Steve Wiltfong, and more over at On3 and Rivals. So no better time right now to get in over at the Wolverine.com on 3 Network. Use the promo code UM1. But, fellas, Chris Perry days. They could get another Doak Walker this year out of one of these guys potentially. He's the only one.
Do you guys remember watching Chris Perry run?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, good player.
We're not that young.
No, I was just trying to think. When were you born? Yeah. So, great running back. So had a really good year, obviously. So would have had a longer NFL career had he not had his injuries. But still, fantastic back at Michigan.
Yeah, and I think Corum would have won that Doak Walker and been the second if he didn't get hurt in 2022. Although Kenneth Walker was pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we
two
won't
hypotheticals because neither of them were there. So one of them didn't show up in the biggest game, and the other guy was hurt. So
who won the Doak Walker that year?
That's a good question.
I thought it was Walker, but
well, no, okay, we're talking about different seasons now.
I have the wrong year, yes, but I think
we're off to a slow start here. Stick with us, folks.
I think Corum would have won it.
This is a morning recording, so
let's talk some Michigan football. Damn it, let's talk about what happened at those pressers yesterday. That was fun stuff, man. I thought,
but if he didn't get hurt in the Ohio State game, he would have had some of those legendary moments. But yes. Still, unbelievably, only one Doak Walker Award winner from the University of Michigan. And it's his day today with 23 days until the Wolverines. We're going to talk about some trench warfare today. The offensive line, the defensive line, the battles in there. It's like World War I. You know, once the pads come on, these two groups are going at it each and every day. They're probably sick of each other by the time fall camp ends, but they're just over a week in right now. Full pads came on Saturday, so right now, I think some good competition. We spoke to Lou Esposito, Michigan's D-line coach, yesterday, as well as offensive line coach Grant Newsome. So we'll get into some of the takeaways from those guys. And let's start with Lou Esposito on the defensive line. He's got a really good group this year. And starting with the edge guys, he's got a good duo, Derek Moore, TJ Guy. He says they're working like pros. It's been really competitive. Guys are knocking each other down, helping each other up. The competitive waters seem to be pretty hot in that edge room, and they got a third starter in Cameron Brandt as well that they consider him at that level.
And Dominic Nichols is probably number 4 and pretty close behind some pass rusher anyway, and some good young guys waiting in the wings, as he mentioned. So, boy, this is going to be, everybody looks at next year and, oh my God, look at what we lose and so on and so forth. But they have some depth. They have some good young depth here, and yeah, there are going to be some players that need to be replaced. That's kind of what the portal's for too, but they've got good young talent on this team too. So I'm pretty confident in this defense for a while. And it was interesting listening to Lou talk about Wink over and over again. He's the best I've seen at this. He's the best I've seen at that, which shouldn't surprise you for a guy with as much experience as he's had and as good as he's been in the NFL. And the year that he had last year at Michigan. So, but I'm really high on this front seven, and I think everybody is clearly. It's not just the guys on the edges; it's the interior guys, it's the linebackers, the way they're working together. And Lou did say that those guys all meet together and convene and have their meetings too. So I have high hopes that, as Wink Martindale has told people, this defense could even be better than last year, based particularly on the front seven.
It's exciting because we've talked about over the years where every very good to great Michigan team has, a dominant defensive line, or at the very least 2 dominant edge rushers. And Derek Moore looks like a guy who, he's had to wait his turn a bit. He's played behind Mike Morris and Braden McGregor and Jalen Harrell, and alongside Josiah Stewart. Now he gets a chance to be that guy, and it seems like he's met and exceeded what they hoped for him this offseason. TJ Guy, oftentimes whenever we ask about those two guys, the defensive line in general, Derek Moore comes up, but TJ Guy is, we talk about 1A and 1B with the running backs. It kind of feels like they think they have that at those two edge rusher spots too. So that's incredibly exciting. They feel like they have a quote unquote third starter in Cam Brandt, like you said. And, when we talk about each year, you're kind of passing the baton to the next guy. They're going to lose both of these starting edge rushers after this year. So it seems like they have a guy that they feel like is that next in line. They've got a room full of guys that are up and comers. Nate Marshall, a freshman, a top 40 guy, top 50, 60, whatever it is, just came in. Some other intriguing pieces in that room. Over the weekend, Wink Martindale said about Dominic Nichols, he's probably just a little behind those top three because he still needs some work, being a run defender and setting the edge and things like that. But I felt like they were going to go on with a pretty firm top four, and it's still maybe there's a little wiggle room for that fourth guy, but that top three is locked in and as good as any group they've had of late, apparently.
Yeah, and it feels like every year it's kind of 3-4 guys at that position, and you rotate. And, Derek Moore's been in that rotation for a long time. He played 224 defensive snaps as a true freshman in 2022, and then up over 400 the last 2 years, over 1,100 snaps for his career. So, as much as last year was a lot about throwing a bunch of guys into new roles, there are guys on this team that have now been in those prominent roles. They've had some struggles, not Derek Moore as much, but some others who had to be thrown in the fire last year. But you now have some players, especially on this defense, that have played big roles. TJ Guy got his feet wet last year, finally, in his fourth season, post 5.5 sacks that year, more than Derek Moore did last season. So they got some guys ready to go. Rayshawn Benny on the interior, as we kind of shift over there, he's one of those guys too. I mean, we mention it all the time. He played behind 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick in Chris Jenkins throughout his career. And he was playing alongside them too, a bunch of snaps over the last few years, redshirted as a freshman, but then has been having a big role the last few. Lou Esposito says not exactly sure who the next starter might be next to Rayshawn Benny. Kind of changes by the day, changes by the period of practice, which, you would love a guy to emerge and completely separate himself. Especially maybe one of those older guys, and maybe that's happening. It's still pretty early, but at the same time, you're going to be able to keep these guys fresh. And 4 of the 6 guys you're going to rotate on the interior of the defensive line are fifth-year seniors or older. And, there aren't going to be that many offensive linemen they go against that are the same age or older than them. They're going to be physically mature. And these are some big bodies. Trey Williams is built like a house. So, we'll see. I expect some drop-off on the interior from last season, but it's not a hot take considering what you had there. I still think it can be very, very good.
Yeah, Mason Graham is the best interior defensive lineman Michigan's ever had, right? And to me, it's not particularly close, and I've seen a lot of them. So you had Kenneth Grant back there, but I do think that they have enough guys up front. I think Rayshawn Benny is going to elevate his game, and I think he's been undervalued at times. If you look at some of the big plays that he's made in some of the biggest games over the years, this is a guy who I think is ready for that next step. And it can have a Kenneth Grant type of impact in a different way. He's got a different body type. Kenneth Grant was obviously a freak of nature, but Rayshawn Benny's played a lot of football here. So there are bodies here, and in talking to people who have seen practice who are close to the program, they say they're interchangeable, right? There's no drop-off when they bring in the second group. So keeping guys fresh. You're going to have to win some games in the fourth quarter, as we saw. That was kind of the key, right? Body blow in 2023 in a lot of those games. And then all of a sudden, in the fourth quarter, you pull away. That's going to be something that they're going to want to do again. And I think that they've got the ability to do that with these guys. So really excited to see it. Really excited to see Derek Moore. I've picked him as my breakout player, I think, 3 years in a row or 2 years in a row. And while I do think that he's been kind of undervalued, he didn't have the big numbers. And as the coaches said many times, a lot of the sacks that were attributed to other guys were really started by him getting pressure. We've said that so many times. And he's so underrated and undervalued in the run game, too. I think he's going to have a huge year. So might be my breakout player again in 2025. But so many so many options there. So I love what Lou Esposito has done with them. It's going to be interesting next year. I think that's going to be his first real test. Everybody's like, oh, Lou is so great, so on and so forth. And as the coaches say, we're only as good as our players, right? Our best, if our players are outstanding and we have great talent, we're going to be great coaches. So next year might be the test there, but this year is a little bit of a test too when you're replacing guys like Mason Graham, who flat out took over that Ohio State game and was flat out dominant in that game. It was unbelievable watching that. How many times have you guys seen that game and just watched him absolutely dominate? So excited though for this group, and Lou Esposito. I like Lou. He's really done a good job here.
Yeah, excited for the interior as well. It's not a one-to-one comparison because they're different skill sets and different body types. But, when you think of a guy like Rayshon Benny, who comes in as one of, I believe, PFF's top returning defensive tackles by grade in the country, there's a little bit, I could see him having sort of a Maurice Hurst type of career arc where, hey, your fifth and final season, you not only break out, but you are the straw that stirs the drink on that defensive line. And, there's some fluidity with the depth. Obviously, that the talent in the aggregate there isn't as good as it was. It's going to be pretty rare that Michigan ever has a first-round defensive tackle, let alone two of them. But your depth is better, and you've got, like I said before, two edge guys that, they call them first-round picks. I think that's a little bit of hyperbole at this point, but two guys that are pros and a third guy who's probably a pro in the middle of that defense. I just think that it's going to be a strength of the team again. Now, is it a unit that's going to single-handedly take over and win a game like it did for you against Ohio State? Probably not. There's going to be some other position groups to factor into that as well. But it's, I like the depth there. I like the guys that they have there. And the bar was set incredibly high, but I don't think they need to meet that bar to still be a very good defensive line and one of the better ones in the Big Ten.
And to your point, Wink Martindale did say that, hey, the linebackers are the guys that we are really kind of concentrating on leading the defense this year, which I thought was really exciting, frankly, knowing how good the defensive line is going to be too. So that's why I'm so bullish on this front seven. And I can't wait to see what they do with Jayshon Barham. They've been talking about different ways to use him. No, he's not going to be lining up at edge a lot, but at times when they bring him in pressure, he's going to be there. It's going to be fun to see what Wink Martindale does, because he's not a one-trick pony, as we've seen and as we know. So what he's got in store for offenses, I think we're going to really see in that Oklahoma game, guys, what this defense is all about. I got a good feeling that defense is going to fare pretty well down there.
I agree. And you work on them a little bit throughout this month and get those guys prepared. But I was going to say the same thing. The linebackers factor into what this defensive line could be. Last year, the linebackers didn't play all that well till the end of the year. And the defensive line was dominant, but you saw some cracks a little bit here and there. Now I think the linebackers are going to be much stronger. You return both starters there, and that'll help the defensive line out, because there could be some struggles on the defensive line at times, but it's the front seven all working together. I wanted to talk about Nate Marshall, the true freshman who came in this summer. He's going through the Bridge program, so sometimes they're not out on the practice field as much as the rest of the guys, the Bridge program being, some academics. He's super explosive. Lou Esposito says you can line up the ball right now and tell him to go get the quarterback, and he can do that. But he also has a lot to learn, and that's kind of what you expect. But at this position, you can kind of impact, he's not going to be a starter anyway. So if he gets 6-7 snaps in a game, maybe not even right away, or maybe he gets 8 or 9 in a game, kind of like, maybe a fifth edge rusher has throughout the past at Michigan, he might be able to make an impact in certain situations. But high-level basketball player, great athlete, and, somebody who's a top 50 recruit coming in this class, somebody that they landed back in April. He flipped to Auburn in August, and then they flip him back in December, a sign of the times in the recruiting world. But I'm excited about Nate Marshall. I think he is one of the freshmen on defense that has the best chance of playing. At some point, he might be the Rod Moore of this year, where it's late in the year when he earns a bigger role. Maybe somebody goes down with injury, something like that. So he's a guy that he's got a little time here to develop in the next few months, but there might be at some point this season where we're saying, man, Remember that play from Nate Marshall on Saturday? I think he's a guy to watch.
Yeah, we'll see. And there are only so many reps to go around. So did Lou even mention Dom Nichols yesterday?
I don't think he was asked, but
No.
He came up Saturday when we talked to Wink.
Okay. Yep. And what did Wink say about him?
Just more or less, the question was about Cam Brandt, but said, it's really those top three guys, and Dominic Nichols would probably be the next guy, but still working on getting him as a run stopper and things like that.
Yep. Yeah. So maybe as a pass rush specialist. So that's going to be interesting to see how they use these guys, right? And who comes in on third down and who does what. But I agree with you on Marshall. His ceiling is obviously very high when they talk about athleticism. So they talked about Benny Patterson a little bit in the middle, already adding some weight. So that's what I mean when people say, well, we're going to lose all these guys, so on and so forth. The great programs reload. Look at Ohio State. There's a reason that they're number 2 in the country after losing all of their talent, because they replace it with outstanding talent too. I thought last year's recruiting class was very good. I think if you looked at that depth chart that Megan just put up, there's a lot of talent, guys, in the younger classes as well. So, and that offense is going to be outstanding for the next couple of years. If you look at what obviously Bryce Underwood, you look at those offensive linemen, we'll get to the offensive line in a minute, but what they were talking about yesterday, Grant Newsome, and what Lou said, Esposito has said about those, he said these guys are going to be absolute stars, that freshman class of offensive linemen. The offense, it's going to flip next year, where the offense is probably going to be expected to carry them maybe a little bit in the early going. And it's, it's a little early to talk about next year, but you know what, when you look at this thing, you're not looking at, when you've got a program like this and you're expected to be in the playoff every year and compete for national championships, you're not always just looking at 1 year. I'm excited about this year, but everybody I've talked to in the building says, yeah, we are hoping to make the playoff this year. And if we get there, we can maybe, if some of our young guys really step up and have 12 games under their belt, maybe we can make a little bit of a run in the playoff if we're playing our best football at the end of the year. If Bryce Underwood has several snaps under his belt and the offensive line comes together, but they're really, really excited going forward in the next few years, thinking they're going to compete for titles, national championships, and looking at the depth chart again on defense and what they are able to do in the portal, fellas, I feel pretty confident about that too.
Yeah, just one last thought on the edge rotation from me. I do think in terms of talent and archetype, a guy like Nate Marshall does sort of resemble what Derek Moore was early in his career. So I went back, I'm on PFF right now. I went back to the 2022 season, and Derek Moore was 5th in the pass rush rotation that year, behind Mike Morris, Jalen Harrell, Iyabi Oki, Taylor Upshaw. All those guys played. Derek Moore still found a way to get 125 snaps. So if they have a pass rush, sort of rotation that goes 4 deep, 5 deep, the 4th guy typically over the last few years, and last year it was, Cam Brandt. Those guys are usually going to get about 165 snaps. And if there's a 5th guy, Derek Moore was that 5th guy. He got about 125. So there is, if they rotate the way that they like to and the way that they have been over the last 5 years or so, there is room for 5 guys in this rotation.
Yeah, and that's not a ton of snaps if you think about it over a season. I remember him coming off the field against Iowa, and he was pissed, according to a couple people down there. I think he had 6 or 7 snaps at Iowa that year. Was that his true freshman year? Throwing things around a little bit, wanted a little more time. But you know what? When you come to a program like Michigan, sometimes you got to wait your turn. And now look at him and the maturity he's got and the leader he's become. Look at his body, guys. When we saw him up close, when we were doing our podcast with him, what a stud he is in terms of his body and just the way he's put together. He's a freak of nature. So, and they got a lot of those guys. And it seems like we say that every year, fellas. There is a lot of talent, a lot of talented football players. So, excited to see how they use these guys and the linebackers too. There's depth there. Remember asking Sharon Moore about that at Media Day, and he said, he was trying to think about in terms of depth. And a few years ago, when they had one of their better linebacking cores, they weren't all that deep. But they got 4 guys that I think they can really depend on this year, maybe 5 even, if somebody else were to step up. So I think they're in really good shape.
Yeah, and that's 16 snaps per game for Derek Moore. 125 of them total were pass rush, but 224 overall defensive snaps. So a pretty good role. I will say the 2022 season, there wasn't a lot of separation between those guys. Mike Morris was the defensive lineman of the year in the Big Ten, but then the other 4 or 5 were kind of very similar and interchangeable. 23, you had like a true 4-man rotation. I think it's going to be closer to that this season, where those 4 guys combined for 21.5 sacks, and no one had over 6.5. Jalen Harrell led the group there. I think Moore could get more than that, no pun intended. But it feels like it's going to be more of a true rotation, and we'll see if Nate Marshall or somebody else, Lugard, Edekpai, Devin Baxter, could work themselves into that mix. I know I forget who it was the other day. He was saying that Lugard and Baxter are the 2 guys. They're probably the 3s right now at that position, but Marshall could dart up the depth chart a little bit.
And that's totally my bad too. I had the wrong tab click. Those are pass rush snaps, but
yes, no, I know what you mean. Yeah,
still about, even when you click on the total snaps.
Yep.
Typically room for 4 guys in their rotation.
Yes, there is. By the way, Bijan Robinson won the Doak Walker in 2022 as we move back over to offense. He was a hell of a player as well.
Yeah,
Decorum
can't argue with that.
Let's move to offensive line, and we'll actually, as we transition, mention the differences Lou Esposito's seen with the Michigan offensive line on the other side of the ball from this season, talking about they're playing more cohesive now. The physicality's there. Now, they're not going against Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, 3 top 90 NFL draft picks, unanimous All-American in Mason Graham. So it's like with anything, when you talk about practice, like Allen Iverson would say, or we talk about the spring game, it's kind of like it's kind of like, okay, someone does something good, but what does that mean for the other side of the ball? So you have to take everything and kind of look at it through that lens. But Grant Newsome met with the media yesterday as well. He wanted to brag about his guys. He used those words. He seemed much more fired up about what they have there. And, they would have never said it a year ago, but he was talking about how at right guard, they have about 4 guys working in right now, and they don't feel like they have to just start somebody by default. He feels like it'll be the best guy of a few good players. And, it's funny. They would never admit that at the time, but, with the perspective of hindsight and having gone through that experience last season, it feels like they are more confident. Nathan Afobe seems to be out front at right guard. Lawrence Hattar, Jake Guarnera, Brady Norton all working in. And then left tackle, the other position battle, Evan Link is who we mentioned first. Andrew Babalola, Blake Frazier also pushing. And he said they challenged Evan Link to have a better season this year and not go through the year. Like last year he was going through it as if, and it was his first year starting and you're kind of feeling things out. Now it's, hey, I have a year of experience. You got to go. You got to be really good. So we'll see who comes out on top in those, but it feels like the guys who came out in the spring seem to be the first names he mentioned at left tackle and right guard.
And the interesting thing is what if Babalola in 3 or 4 games proves to be the guy at left tackle? Then what do you do with Evan Link? If he's not working at all at guard, then I think he's still one of your best 5 linemen, which is what they're always talking about. So it seems like they have a set plan here, and I'm excited about Babalola. I'm not as bullish on Link, and with Grant Newsome, and I love Grant. Last year he said that Gio El-Hadi would have been in the NFL had he not been playing behind guys, and then Gio went out and probably had a very disappointing year by his own standards, and he said that many times. So I'm taking everything here with a grain of salt, but it does, in speaking to other people, seem like Juan Castillo has helped. They've got guys that are capable. They've got more than capable bodies. It's about putting 5 together. And we're going to know early if Evan Link is up to the task at left tackle. I still have my doubts after watching what happened at right tackle last year in pass pro. And everybody points to that Alabama game. I don't think there were a whole lot of opportunities in pass protection in that game. If we're talking true pass protection, to say, okay, he's improved dramatically there and he's going to be the guy and he's going to be this, he's going to be that. So, and a lot of people still think that guard is his best position. So it'll be interesting, though, because next year is going to be completely different. You're going to have guys that in their second years, you're going to have Sprague and Babalola as your tackles that are actual tackle prospects. And Babalola is going to be a tackle in the NFL too, right? So, but this is going to be an interesting experiment to see what happens when You've got a couple veterans in there. I think there are 2 spots up for grabs, and we wrote about it yesterday, left tackle and right guard. But what happens if they don't play well early? So hopefully that's not the case. Evan Link proved me wrong, man. I think that it sounds like he's playing with more confidence, and he's going against guys. He's going against the best of the best every day. When you look at Derek Moore, you look at TJ Guy, and they talk about those guys and Wink Martindale's looks that he's giving them. So he should be prepared for everything. But I want to see a guy at left tackle that, okay, you don't have to give some help over there. You don't have to worry about him getting beat every other play where Bryce Underwood's running for his life. We'll see if that's there.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say on Link is that if he does lose out on the starting job to Babalola, whether it's in the opener or a few weeks into the season, given that it doesn't seem like they have kicked the tires on how he might fare at guard, I don't think he would be one of their best 5 offensive linemen. I think that he might just be that next guy off the bench, or maybe that extra blocker, that 6th lineman. It's interesting that there are 4 guys, I think, for the right guard job that Grant Newsome mentioned. Nate Afobe's in there. Lawrence Tatar, the transfer from Ferris State. He said they've been giving Jake Guarnera some run there. Also a Brady Norton, the transfer. Those are, that's a wide ranging list of candidates there. And that's the spot where if, people have asked if there's any spot where you could see someone who's a bit of a surprise rising up and taking a job. I think it's certainly by the numbers game part of it, seems like that might be the spot. I think it might be the biggest question they have right now, given that there are 4 guys in the mix for that job. I just think that left tackle, it feels like they're trying to speak the Evan Link thing into existence where, we're not in practice, all we have was what people tell us, but it just feels inevitable that a guy like Andrew Babalola, with his athleticism, his footwork is much better, given that he has a basketball background. It just feels like he's tailor-made for that spot. And even if you take a few lumps early on, he's a guy that I think will start the majority of games there this season. I think he's too good and too advanced not to. So what that means for Evan Link after that will be pretty interesting.
There's so much riding on the left tackle spot. I think center is as important as any position on that line because of, the cohesiveness and, communication and how big that is. But left tackle, it's the blind side of your quarterback. Grant Newsome was talking about it yesterday, how in baseball, you're an incredible player if you get a hit 3 out of 10 times. But in football, if you have 10 pass rush snaps in a quarter and you allow 3 pressures, the other way, you have 7 good snaps and 3 not as good ones, and you get a guy hit, you get a guy hurt, you get a guy sacked, then you're getting pulled from the game. So you can't afford to have that. Evan Link struggled mightily last year in both the run game and the pass game. And there's more riding on the pass protection because you could get a guy hurt from your blind side. They weren't great at tackle a couple years ago in 2023, but the best part of it was when the pressure would come off the right side, JJ McCarthy a lot of times kind of figured it was coming, okay? And 2, had the ability to see it quickly and make a play with his legs and kind of find a throwing lane for himself or scramble. So the left side's different, and it's a true freshman quarterback potentially with Bryce Underwood back there. I think it will be. And you have, you can't see everything on that side. So, yeah, it will be interesting. Grant Newsome also says Andrew Babalola is 10 times smarter than he was at the time. He had him beat by quite a bit in the SAT, which is, Grant Newsome's incredibly smart, especially academically and football-wise. And you also, he said he's much more talented than he was at the time. And Grant Newsome's a guy who played early at Michigan and then in 2016 looked like a really good left tackle and before he got hurt, kind of a cheap shot against Wisconsin. So, yeah, you could see it happen. I think he's going to play right away either way, even if he doesn't start. Remember last year they rotate at center with Greg Crippen and Dom Jadis, and Jadis gets hurt. Crippen takes that job and runs with it. You got to be ready for all things. So you don't want Link to go down in a game and Babalola hasn't played a snap. I think they're going to play him early.
Well, I think he'll be that extra lineman, right? And it is a bold strategy though, right? To take that guy that was terrible on the right side for a lot of the year and say, hey, we'll make him our left tackle.
Put him at a much more important position.
Exactly. Yes. So we'll see if it works out for them. But I do think that Babalola will get, like like you said, I think he'll play, and I think you'll see him as that extra lineman like they used to do. And I think Ty Haywood's going to get some run too at times. So, but they really seem set right at the 3 positions, which is good with Crippen and Sprague and El Hadi. Hopefully they can figure out those other 2. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Wow.
Take your Claritin over there.
Exactly.
No Claritin.
Yeah.
I got to say, what scares me and something that I did, so many of the narratives around this offensive line has been, it wasn't cohesive enough last season. Those guys weren't as physical as they needed to be. The Michigan method, so to speak, I mean, they were still into the USC, Minnesota, I think even the Washington game before they had settled on a starter at, Dom Jadis and Greg Crippen kept rotating at center. And I think that played a role in why that offensive line play was so frenetic, especially early in the year. So not saying that they should have this figured out by the opener. You should always leave it open where guys can go in and get the job. But, it needs to be a true meritocracy, and you need to, the guy that's performing the best needs to play. Hot take, right? I think they need to hone that in and tailor that a little better this year.
Yeah. And Grant Newsome was asked about that yesterday. When do you name a starting lineup? Do you go with a group and let them kind of grow together, or do you wait it out, let the competition ensue? I'd say, at some point here by midway point in fall camp, they got to have a lineup figured out that they really, feel pretty confident that that's going to be the group. You still can compete. Someone could still win the job. But I remember Trevor Keegan in 2023 talking about how it's going to take time. And they only had 2 guys to replace on that line. It was the center and the left tackle spot. And it took that group a little bit to get up to speed. And they had a bunch of guys that were there for a long time. And then, in 2022, it didn't take as long. They were good right off the bat. And 23 was really good too. It wasn't major issues, but you're kind of comparing it to the year before. In 22, they had less to replace. Just plug in a new center and you kind of roll. Right tackle Carson Barnhart had been there forever already and played in games. So this, you have a little bit more that you need to plug in. And, I think they would benefit, to your point, Anthony, to play together a little bit more, get a lot of those reps together. But at the same time, I think they're probably going to rotate at least one spot. And so
I just think you need to find a starting 5 that you're comfortable with. And if a guy is struggling, make the move, but don't do the musical chairs thing where it's like, all right, well, now he gets 2 series and we'll put this guy in for 2 series. I know that Brent Venables at Oklahoma has not been the best head coach, but I just feel like you go against a defensive mind like that. And if you're playing roulette with your offensive line on the road in a loud environment, that's scary to me. So, make it performance based. And if a guy struggles, throw the other guy out there. But the rotation thing, I don't think that helps continuity at all. I really don't.
The more reps you get as an offensive line, the better you get. The cohesiveness. Doug Skeen, my podcast partner, says it all the time. So that is that's what's important. Yeah, the more reps you get, you kind of get a feel of what the guy next to you is going to do, and then that's why the best lines are the veteran lines. What the right guard knows what right tackle is going to do, left guard, left tackle. So working together is huge. So hopefully they develop that here in camp. I'm encouraged by what we've heard in terms of there's going to be improvement. I am wary of how much and if it's going to be good enough, if it's going to be championship level. If it's a good offensive line, this team will be a playoff team. I really believe that. If it's not good, then it won't be. So I think a lot is riding on it.
And how quickly they can get good or solid, right? Because you have tough games early. So you don't have all that time. Even more reason, I guess, to pick a 5 or pick 6. It tells me last year that they were doing some of those rotations, that they were kind of picking guys by default. As Grant Newsome said, he didn't say it specifically about last season, but, you could kind of read the tea leaves there that he feels like they're not in that spot this year. Again, could be lip service, could be not. You never know exactly how much to read into what these guys say publicly, but he did seem a lot more confident. Let's move on to Joel Klatt's top 25 heading into the season. He's got Michigan in the top 10 at number 10 behind Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, Clemson, Oregon, Notre Dame, Georgia, LSU, and Alabama. And he said, I almost put him ahead of Alabama because they beat him in the bowl game, but he didn't. He's still pretty high on Illinois in the Big Ten at 13. He has Indiana at 17. He's got Iowa at 22 as well, and Michigan's first big marquee opponent, Oklahoma, at 24. So I'm guessing he thinks Michigan goes into Norman and wins, although this is preseason rankings, right? Not predicting what's going to happen. He says, I can't help myself. I love the way they finished the season. This defense got it going late in the year, even with their star players not playing. They cannot be worse on offense than they were a year ago. And you know what? I think they're going to be back among the elite in college football. Your guys' reaction?
Yeah, what's elite? Is elite a playoff team? Is elite top 10? Is elite top 5? I mean, to me, elite is the cream of the crop. You're looking at a top 5 program, right? So I saw you ask that question yesterday on the message board, Clay, and my response would be not this year, but yeah, in the next few years, I think they will be. I think they will certainly have a chance to be a playoff team this year. And that Oklahoma game is going to be huge. It was interesting that the coaches left Oklahoma off, although I think they were 26th, if I'm not mistaken, and were the first team receiving in the receiving votes category. So that game is going to determine, which of these teams, who's really kind of number 15. Oklahoma has a chance, honestly. They've upgraded. It seems like. We'll see how they do against that Michigan defense, but you'll swap those two teams essentially if Michigan loses that game. And then Michigan's got a couple tough ones coming up at Nebraska, at USC in the first 6 games too. So is this a top 10 football team? It is. That would mean probably a 2-loss team, right? And I still have Michigan at 3 losses. You got 4 swing games, essentially. That Washington game could be kind of tricky. As Clay has said, that looks to be an improved football team. So you never know about it at Michigan State. Michigan's much, much better than Michigan State, but they go up there and Michigan State, it's kind of a tough place to play at times, a couple of years ago, notwithstanding. So, but I don't think they're there yet. Would I put them in the top 10? No, I thought 14 was just right. And I think that puts them about 9-3 and right on the cusp of a playoff berth. So we'll see. Your hope is that one of those 3 losses, I guess, isn't Ohio State by the end of the year. Maybe you lose those first 3 road games. I don't know. I wouldn't predict that. But you get to Ohio State and you're playing your best football again, and you're in their heads, and you come out with a win there, and that bumps you up to maybe in the top 10. So that would give them a better shot at the playoffs. So, but long-winded answer, I don't think this is a top 10 team yet this year. I think they're right up just outside of that, but it wouldn't stun me.
Certainly have top 10 potential. I'm not there going into the season, given some of the questions we have, though I did predict them to go 10-2. And by virtue of how I picked the games, they would be in the Big Ten championship game. Losing to Penn State, I still think Penn State, experience, talent, they'll win the conference. But if you're someone who says counterpoint, James Franklin, I'll listen to that too. That's a pretty important data point there. But I think to be a quote-unquote elite team now, you are probably in that top 6 to 7. And I think everything would have to go right for them to get there this year. And it could. Things could click, and Bryce Underwood could be the guy that we think he has a chance to be, and Chip Lindsey's offense, takes a big step forward. That's all on the table, but I just think I just foresee like a 4-2 start to the season, which means if you are going to be an elite team, you're gonna have to run the table, get yourself into the playoff, win a home playoff game, and that's still a tough road for them. So I say on the outside looking in, I think the coaches poll had them at 14, which, if you're going by the 12-team playoff system, that puts them right outside of that. That feels like the most likely range of outcomes. But I do think they have, top 8 potential. Could they finish somewhere in that 6 to 8 range? It wouldn't surprise me. No.
And Penn State at number 1, guys, I just don't. They're going to lose to Oregon. They're going to lose to Ohio State. I know that they don't have a daunting schedule after that, but I don't see them winning either of those 2 games.
Yeah, it's tough to envision them winning both, and maybe they just have to win one, and somehow they do it this year. But yeah, it's so weird because a lot of these people are trying to push the Penn State narrative, but a lot of us that have watched a lot of Penn State, especially in their big games, are kind of like, all right, they still, as you said, Anthony, 2 words, James Franklin. I think 10 is high starting the year. And remember, these are starting out the season, but I think Michigan has tremendous upside this year and could be a team in the top 10 at the end of the year. And then it's a great question, Chris. What is elite? because the sport has changed. I mean, the 7 seed won the national championship last season, 2 losses in the regular season. They finished 4th in the standings. The standings are all wonky because you have a ton of tiebreakers, so you can't take too much stock in that because there are 18 teams now in the Big Ten. What is elite? I mean, the talent is more spread out. You have less depth at, places like Georgia and Alabama, more talent at places like Oregon and Miami and Notre Dame and Texas A&M and go on and on. And so I'm not exactly sure. And then if you do become a team that's top 10, top 11, you get yourself in the college football playoff, then you might need a break or two, whether it's a health something, on the other side, or your team stayed extraordinarily healthy. You get a break or two like Penn State did last season. Part of the fool's gold with Penn State, if it is fool's gold, is that they had an easy draw to the semifinal. Now everyone's like, all right, well, they return everybody. They were a semifinal team. It's like they weren't really a top 4 team. So I don't know what elite is. So that'd be my follow-up to Joel Klatt. What is elite in today's college football? It might be top 10 because you give yourself a shot.
Yeah.
And it might also be how many future NFL draft picks do you have in your starting lineup? Because as we've seen the last 2 years with Michigan, and certainly, again, I get that Ohio State lost 2 games, but they sort of lapped the field last year in terms of their guys that they got to the league. So, is Michigan a team that is going to have double-digit draft picks next year? I don't think I buy that. So, and not all of those teams will, but how many guys will they have compared to the rest of that field? I'd have to go look, but I don't think they're quite there yet.
387 days till the start of the 2026 Michigan football season. I know that year has been referenced a decent amount, so I just Googled it. That would be if they do play week 0 against Western Michigan in Germany. But as I botched at the beginning, Chris Perry days until the 2025 season. And Kenneth Walker did not win the Doak Walker in 2022. It was Bijan Robinson. So a self-proclaimed idiot. Apologies for that. I think that's going to be our show for today. We'll talk to more players later on in the day, more press conference coverage, intel, all that from fall camp. So keep it locked here at thewolverine.com. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, but also head to the website at The Wolverine. You can use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. That gets you well into Michigan season. So go and do that right now. Best deal in America. And we will see everyone next time.